President Trump's big, beautiful bill includes full expensing. That is a policy which allows businesses to deduct the cost of investments and capital assets immediately. The Tax Foundation estimates this would move and boost America's long-run GDP by 1%. I want to bring in Club for Growth President David McIntosh. David, good morning. And you've got a Wall Street Journal opinion piece called "Full Expensing Boosts Economic Growth." You write the most efficient way for Congress to unleash economic growth is to establish full and permanent expensing. The 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act tried to achieve this goal, but its provision excluded investments in factories and other buildings and began phasing out in 2023. So tell us more about the reason that you wanted this op-ed to be front and center today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Cheryl. This is one of the key provisions of the big, beautiful bill because it's going to incentivize American companies to bring jobs back here, to build factories. They can immediately expense that cost, and that'll help us move the supply chain back to this country. The House did the right thing. They included it in the big, beautiful bill, but they made it temporary. It expires in about 3 or 4 years. President Trump fully supports this provision. He had Secretary Bessent go to the Hill and say, make this permanent so we get the full incentive effect. So now the Senate has to do the right thing, tweak the bill a little bit, and just make the whole provision permanent so businesses can rely on it, make investment decisions, start building those factories, start bringing the jobs back to the U.S.
I want to ask you about these growth provisions in the bill and the estimates, the guesstimates, you almost want to call them, because
right.
it is what you're talking about. And I brought this up with Congresswoman Claudia Tenney earlier in the program. But if you look at the different estimates of how this would grow the economy, Tax Foundation says it would boost long-term GDP by 0.8%. Penn Wharton, they're looking at a 0.4% increase in GDP over the first decade. Joint Committee on Taxation, they're saying a 1.83% annual growth. They're up to a range of 1.86%. Yale Budget Lab, they're saying 2%. But this is one of the hardest things to quantify, and this is where people go after the CBO and criticize the CBO, because a lot of times they would do projections that did not end up coming to fruition and being untrue.
Right.
How do we judge this? What is the best way to look at this? Because this is key for the Republicans' push. Right.
The key way to look at it is the way the Tax Foundation looks at it, way some of the ones that got to the 1.5%, 2%. They have what's called dynamic scoring. They have models that say, if we put this in, what's the incentive effect? What will happen? How will people react to it? CBO is just kind of flat. Oh, if we put it in, we estimate the cost to be this much, and it won't have that much of an effect. Historically, they've always been wrong. And these other models are much closer to what actually happens when you have a provision like this. Businesses get to immediately deduct the cost of building a new factory in America. That's going to create a lot of incentives for them to go ahead, bring that supply chain back to this country.
Which is crucial to President Trump's vision of bringing manufacturing back in true form and fashion to the United States of America. On that investment side, Liz Peek is on set. She's got a question about that as well for you, sir.
Yeah, you rightfully, obviously, talk about how certainty is so important for American companies, investing and so forth. But a lot of companies, the FT has a front page headline today about American companies, but also foreign companies, saying, what about this foreign investment tax that's in this bill? Could you comment on that? Because that seems to do exactly the opposite of what this administration is trying to accomplish.
You know, there are a lot of different provisions in this bill, and that's one where they were trying to capture some revenue, they thought, from foreign companies. But you're exactly right. What the effect is, we don't get that foreign capital coming in to actually bring the supply chain back here. What we need in the bill is every incentive for the U.S. economy to grow, for foreigners to invest, U.S. citizens to invest here in the country, and that will grow the economy, create new jobs. They should look at that and say, is this really having the effect we think we want? It's not. It won't punish foreigners. It'll just punish us because we don't get the advantage of the money coming in.
And Michael, you've got a question for him as well. Mike, go ahead.
David, it goes beyond just the tax treatment. If you want to reindustrialize our country. How can you not have a policy like this? Because it goes beyond just spurring a little bit of manufacturing. Like the industrial base for our country has been gutted over several decades. If the goal is to turn that tide, if to turn this big ship around, how can we not have this policy?
No, you're exactly right. It's a crucial one. Our think tank version, part of the Club for Growth, did a study on it last year, reaffirmed that 1% to 2% growth in the economy. It's the best way, along with deregulation, to incentivize people to build things here, grow the economy, rebuild that industrial base, because government's on their side. It's not taxing them too much. It's not over-regulating them. It's not requiring years of permits to build a new factory. Those are the things we have to do to rebuild that industrial base.
The regulatory changes, I've long said that the EPA is the first place to start when it comes to over-regulation if you want to actually see something meaningful built, whether it's a home or a factory. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's something that Lee Zeldin has really been championing in his new role as administrator of that agency. David, before you go,
he's been great.
Yeah, he's right. And this is something that we have seen, just so much red tape, and it's got to be eliminated. Before you go, though, I just really quick, you're in Los Angeles this morning. It's, what is it, 5:45 in the morning. So you had to be diverted off your route home last night because of those anti-ICE riots that we've seen breaking out. So what's going on in Los Angeles? What's your perspective here, sir?
Yeah, we were driving up the 101, and suddenly protesters were out on the freeway, and then you had Governor Newsom saying, "Oh, there's nothing really happening," and everybody saw last night, 3 cars lit on fire. I noticed downtown there were police at every corner. President Trump's doing exactly the right thing to bring in the National Guard, stop this type of destructive protest, and go ahead and enforce the law with the ICE agents.
Well, that's interesting that you say that what you're seeing on the ground and what Gavin Newsom are saying are completely two different realities, David. That's very fascinating. Well,
it's typical. He was just being political, Nothing here, folks. Don't look.
Yeah.
And then we see right on the TV, cars are being set on fire. Protesters are disrupting the freeway. I'm a visitor, but imagine what it's like living in Los Angeles, having to worry about what will this spread to my neighborhood.
Yeah, absolutely, as they're trying to recover from the fires. Great point. David McIntosh, thank you for being here, David.
My pleasure. Great to talk to you, Cheryl.
All right.